The Antikythera ship sank 60 before Christ. Cargo from the dying east, the rising west. Wait, what was on that ship? Antikythera, the world's first computer. 30 bronze gears, a computer that predicted eclipses, tracked 5 planets across the sky. The real mystery isn't where this ended up. It's who paid for it. Somebody designed it. Somebody machined the gears. Somebody paid for the bronze, the workshop, the years of trial and error to get the planetary motions right, because that is how technology actually gets built. Every working ecosystem needs 3 things. Anywhere, any century. Founders, money, market. 2,000 years ago, in a 400 square kilometer island in the southern Aegean, the founders were already there. The money was already there. The market was already there. The Antikythera mechanism is what survives of an ecosystem we forgot we had. Start with the buyer, because no technology gets built without someone willing to buy it. Late 2nd century, 1st century before Christ, Rome is becoming the richest city in the known world. Senatorial families pull silver out of the eastern provinces faster than they can spend it. They build villas, they buy art, they import philosophers as live-in tutors, and they want one more thing. They want machines, mechanical sundials, planetary globes, water clocks. Anything that could predict an eclipse 40 years before it happened was a status object that no rival could match. Cities competed too. Athens commissioned the Tower of the Winds around the year 50 before Christ. 8 sundials, 8 wind vanes, internal water clock, public installation in the agora, a civic statement that you understood time better than your neighbor. Cicero, in the Roman senator, the lawyer, the writer, he saw one of these mechanisms in person. Around 45 before Christ, he writes a book called De Natura Deorum, The Nature of the Gods, and he describes by name a sphere that his friend Posidonius built, a globe that displayed the motions of the sun and the moon and the 5 known planets, working. So the demand was documented. The customers had names. The price point was elite, a senatorial class object, not a household tool. The total addressable market was small, but the check sizes were huge. Modern luxury watch market today is around $6 billion a year, served by fewer than 10,000 active collectors at the top end. The Hellenistic instrument market looks structurally similar: concentrated demand, astronomical prices, and buyers willing to wait years for delivery. That is what a market for the world's first computer looks like. But who actually made it? Which of the 3 is leaving the room in your industry right now? Founders, money, or market? Drop your thoughts below. Back to the video. The founders worked in 3 places: Rhodes, Alexandria, Syracuse. 3 cities, 3 different funding models, 1 shared engineering tradition that passed from teacher to student for 200 years. Rhodes was the headquarters. A man named Hipparchus worked there in the 2nd century before Christ. He cataloged 850 stars. He calculated the length of the lunar month accurate to within seconds of the modern value. He formalized the mathematics that the Antikythera mechanism uses on its eclipse dial. Half a century later, Posidonius ran a school in the same city. Cicero studied with him. Pompey visited him. The roster of clients reads like a who's who of late Republican Rome. And Cicero, again, in his own writing, Posidonius built a working mechanism with planetary motions on it. Alexandria was the corporate research lab. The Mouseion under the Ptolemies was a state-funded research institution, roughly 1,000 scholars on salary at its peak. Permanent staff, permanent buildings, permanent budget. A man named Ctesibius built water clocks and pneumatic pumps there in the 3rd century before Christ. A man named Heron built automata and a working steam reaction engine. Never industrialized, but it ran. They were Ptolemaic employees. Syracuse was the single founder model. Archimedes, funded by King Hieron II for 50 years. He built war machines, he built a planetarium. Cicero, 3rd time, saw the planetarium when a Roman general brought it back to Rome as loot after Syracuse fell in 212 before Christ. 3 hubs, 3 funding models, 1 pool of engineers who knew each other's work, copied each other's designs, sent students back and forth. Founders, money, market. The pieces existed. The question is, who was writing the checks? Here is where the modern analogy stops being a metaphor and starts being literally how it worked. Patronage in the Hellenistic world functioned structurally the same way patient capital functions today. Long horizons, aligned incentives, tiny number of check writers, enormous check sizes. What we now call venture capital, the Hellenistic world called patronage. Hieron II funded Archimedes for 50 years. That is not a transaction. That is a relationship. Hieron got working catapults that defended Syracuse against the Roman Navy for 2 full years. He got a planetarium for the throne room. He got the prestige of being the man who employed the most famous engineer in the world. The Ptolemies in Alexandria did the same thing at industrial scale. The Mouseion paid working salaries to a couple of hundred scholars at any one time, across multiple generations. State-funded research and development, permanent. The investors weren't anonymous, the investors were kings. They got engineering output, they got medical research, they got the largest library in the Mediterranean, and they got the political prestige of being the smartest court in the known world. And the most striking moment is the bailout. 226 before Christ. Rhodes was hit by an earthquake, brought down the harbor walls, brought down the Colossus, brought down half the city. Polybius records the response. Ptolemy III sent silver and bronze and timber. Antigonus Doson sent more silver. Hieron II sent grain and silver. Seleucus II sent equipment. 4 rival empires simultaneously all wired emergency aid to one tech hub. Because every one of them benefited from Rhodes being functional. The schools stayed open. The workshops kept building. The engineers kept their jobs. Patient capital, aligned interests, catastrophe absorbed by a syndicate of patrons. There was no exit. The patron model didn't have one. Founders, money, market. This is how the world's first computer got built. Not by one genius, by an ecosystem with 200 years of compounding investment behind it. We drop new Bronze Age breakdowns every single week. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next strategy. Back to the video. And here is what nobody talks about when they talk about the Antikythera mechanism. 88 before Christ. Mithridates VI sacks Delos, the Aegean trading hub. 80,000 Romans and Italians killed in a single coordinated massacre. The Eastern Mediterranean commerce that paid for Hellenistic research and development wrecked overnight. 86 before Christ. Sulla sacks Athens, drags philosophers, libraries, instruments back to Rome as loot. 63 before Christ. Pompey ends the Mithridatic Wars and absorbs the Eastern Mediterranean as Roman provinces. The Hellenistic kingdoms, gone. 48 before Christ. Caesar's siege of Alexandria. Partial library destruction. 31 before Christ. Actium. Augustus consolidates. Ptolemaic Egypt becomes a Roman province. The last independent patron house is gone. Within 60 years, every single royal house that funded the Hellenistic research and development ecosystem is either destroyed, annexed, or impoverished. Rome becomes the only patron, and Roman patronage funds aqueducts, military hardware, and infrastructure, not speculative scientific instruments. Founders, money, market. The market is gone. The Antikythera ship sank around the year 60 before Christ, right in the middle of the collapse, carrying luxury cargo from the dying east to the rising west. The mechanism on board may have been one of the last working specimens of its kind, being shipped out of a patronage zone that no longer existed. Hieron of Alexandria's steam reaction engine, sketched, never industrialized, sat in his books for 1,800 years. The next surviving astrolabe shows up in the 8th century in the Islamic world. The next mechanical computer comparable to the Antikythera shows up in 14th century England. A 1,500-year gap. Not because human beings got stupider, because the ecosystem that funded the work disappeared. The capability to put a human on the moon was developed under Cold War patient capital, abandoned in 1973. 60 years later, we are still rebuilding the launch architecture from the ground up. Supersonic passenger flight was abandoned in 2003. 23 years and counting. The transistor, Unix, the laser, information theory, all built inside one corporate research model that activist investors dismantled in the 1990s. The model is gone. The replacements are not parity, fusion. Chronically underfunded since the 1980s. 30 years late, founders, money, market. The Antikythera mechanism is what happens when one of the three goes away. The question is, which one is leaving the room right now? Up next, the divers who died for it. Suit up.